Iman, welcome to Professional Book Girl. For listeners, we've been like chatting off air, and I just said to her, like, we're the same brand of girl. So this is going to be a lot of fun. I have loved both of your books, 100 of the Girls, and your most recent, The Most Famous Girl in the World, which we're here to chat about today. Can you give everybody the elevator pitch for that book?
Okay, absolutely. Can I just say, I'm so happy to be here. We've been chatting, we've been gabbing, and I know that this is just going to be so much fun. The Most Famous Girl in the World, my sophomore novel, which is coming out on September 17th, is sort of like an Inventing Anna meets Killing Eve, cat and mouse chase, campy, satirical, like hilarious, thriller-esque book, like huge genre mishmash. The elevator pitch is that a Middle Eastern American reporter and functional train wreck is convinced that the subject of her most viral story is quietly killing off her sources in plain sight, but absolutely nobody believes her, with the exception of like a very sexy but sus FBI agent, and chaos ensues. So if you like to laugh and gasp and maybe even think a little bit when you read, I think Most Famous Girl is kind of I hope, perfect for easing out of your summer reads into your fall reads book. So
I read this in one sitting by my pool because I love murder on the beach. Like thrillers are my beach reads. So I feel like this is like September's the perfect time for it to come out because it's kind of like if you're a cozy thriller girl by like in the rain, it's perfect. Or if you're like me and you want to have a September beach day, you can bring this book with you.
basically, if you think that fall starts post Labor Day, or if you think fall starts on the 21st, we got you covered either way. Like,
Yeah.
enjoy this however.
Everyone. So how did you come up with this idea?
Okay, so I was actually at dinner in 2021 with my friends and fiance at the time, now husband, when we got like a push notification that the then president of the United States had alleged to want to pardon the Tiger King, who was like with by the way sending a limousine to the prison because he was currently serving a sentence for attempted murder for hire. Sorry. And my then fiance, now husband, turned to me and goes, "Can you imagine if the most famous person in the world was a literal murderer and people just did not give a shit?" And I was like, "Wait, can you say that again?" Like, notes app. Can you say that one more time? And the wheels of my brain just started to turn, and the concept for the most famous girl in the world was born later that day. It's crazy.
I love that this came from Tiger King because when I read this, I was like, this is Inventing Anna vibes. And I'm like, I love all the scammer content. I think it's a really fun genre for thrillers. It's different. And there has been a lull. So when I heard that you had a scammer book, I was like, oh, I'm so excited because I've been missing these scammers in my life. Were you inspired by Anna Delvey, or were you kind of just like, there's so many, you could really like put any of these famous scammers to the book?
Okay, 1000%. Although Tiger King was the person who led to the question in question, I was one of the OG girlies who like followed Anna Delvey's story from like the New York Magazine and Vanity Fair article. Like,
This is how I knew we were the same because I remember when that article came out.
literally like that. I remember feeling like hope in journalism again because the story was so well written and told. And like I followed Anna Delvey's journey, but honestly, to tell you the truth, like the question that inspired the text has only grown more relevant. And like, although Anna Delvey's circa like 2021 was inspiring to me, 2024 Anna Delvey, it's literally like she knew that I was publishing this book and wanted to act out like in accordance to my promo, because like she's got her own house arrest reality show. She's on the cover of magazines. She like is gonna have her own New York Fashion Week show. She obviously
I didn't
has.
know that.
My mom sent it to me and goes, "Should we go?" I was like, "Are you are you invited? And yes, obviously she has a huge Netflix adaptation.
I saw a TikTok of her the other day, actually, like right when I finished reading this, of her upstate with Kelly Catrone, like at a farmer's market, and she has her ankle monitor on, so I was like, how did that range is pretty far, and like, what are you doing with Kelly Catrone?
But when you see this, it's amazing how you can feel yourself already starting to like her more. Like this is exactly what Most Famous Girl and Poppy Hastings was giving. And then you have to sort of pause and ask yourself, why am I having these reactions? Like, why am I all of a sudden thinking that she's serving with Kelly Catrone? But it's not just her. It's like Elizabeth Holmes is another great example. Like she was given her own redemption arc by the New York Times. She did a whole rebrand as Liz. Like she also has her own $100,000 like adaptation. And like we don't even have time to get into like Gypsy Rose Blanchard. Congratulations.
Well, so that's who I was going to talk about, because I've been obsessed with, I feel like it's embarrassing to admit I'm obsessed with Gypsy Rose because the way that it's gone. But I remember when her case happened, like I remember seeing That Bitch Is Dead and I was like, what is this? And I've been in like, since she got out last year, I've been having this like moral crisis, because at first I'm like, get your money. And now I'm like, it leans into the major theme of this book, which is like making bad people famous and how we're all kind of complicit in it. So I feel like we're already exploring that theme. But what was it like for you to actually like get in there and write about this, which like I'm sure you subconsciously do it. I consciously like aid in making these people famous.
No, 100%. And when I was writing the book, it felt to me like more than ever, America is obsessed with like the anti-heroine or women's wrongs. The phrase was literally going viral. Like the movie had just come out. Like the lore behind people's ill-fated decisions was built, like it was building blocks into its own phenomena. And I started thinking like, well, how far would a charming celebrity con, like truly someone who has done illegal things, have to go to permanently turn public opinion against them? And I don't mean like they're canceled for like a week. I mean, we don't talk about them. We don't give them attention anymore.
Yeah.
Question that like me and Rose and all of the characters in this sort of like wacky, campy satire want to ask the reader. But I'm also very interested in this idea that like celebrities actually hold a mirror to ourselves. Like our interest in celebrities allows us to interrogate our own insecurities, and that we will sometimes like attribute positive characteristics to people that we deem more authentic, like no matter how they behave or act, because we feel like we know them, we feel like we are them. But I don't know, parasocial relationships are their own epidemic, and they're only growing more relevant. I mean, look at what has happened to Chapel Roan in this week. Like that case study has nothing to do with making bad people famous, but like the way that people, one, attach their own narrative onto Chapel Roan and then feel entitled to her, and then two, the ways in which like the second that she broke the fourth wall, people started dismissing her entirely.
Yeah.
Point the ways in which that celebrities can hold a mirror to ourselves. So I'm really fascinated by like the con of celebrity in America, and I'm also very interested in like how our own online activity can actually say more about ourselves than perhaps the celebrity in question.
I mean, I love all that because I've always been so obsessed with celebrity, but I think because like living in New York, I'm sure you have a similar experience. Like you see them on the street. So it's like I've had conversations with very famous people, and you start to realize like, oh, they're a person. And I've like literally had conversations with people being like, this is a real person that you're talking about. And actually, when I was reading your book, I kept thinking back to a book I had read a few weeks prior, Where Are You, Echo Blue? Which really, oh my God, you would love it. It's about this like starlet who goes missing, and it takes place in the early 2000s. And then, so you're getting like her story from like Nepo baby child star through like her 20s. And then the reporter has like she thinks she's like the only person who can find her because she grew up obsessed with her. And so then it's like this very parasocial thing. And I like all the main themes that were in your book, I was like, oh, these two go so hand in hand.
I am literally adding to cart, like as you talk. I would love this book. Oh my gosh. Okay, thank you.
Of
Incredible.
course. That's what I'm here to
Book Rex.
do.
No, that's a great example is like a stalker behavior. Like the ways in which like people chop up boundaries because they start to like give in to conspiracy and like
Yeah,
where they start to like drink the Kool-Aid a little bit too much. All of that appears in this book, and it's done in a way that is like somewhat exaggerated, a little bit navel gazy. I'm hoping that like while we critique ourselves, we can also laugh a little bit as well. But I'm glad that it resonated with you. I mean, not glad because I mean, there's work in there to be done on myself too. But like, I'm glad that something about that felt poignant.
definitely. What was it like to actually tackle that theme? Because as we're saying, like it is so current. I mean, the word parasocial, I only started hearing in like the last few years, but it is such a big, heavy topic. I think it's a bigger topic than most people even realize it is.
I mean, for me at least, it really made me take a step back and think about the ways in which I interact with people online. Like, especially the ways in which that I will like jump on the bandwagon of like hate or love. Like I'll love
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like everyone else loves them, or I'll, open my TikTok comments section and immediately go and see what everyone is saying about someone else. Like it's really made me take a step back and look at the full picture of the ways in which we all are attributing to this system of glorifying people's behavior and also acting as if we have some sort of like personal stake in their success. So it was in some ways like made me feel like I need to book a therapy session ASAP. But in other ways it also gave me like a lot of empathy for the rest of the girls, and it made me want to log offline, which we were talking about a little bit before we started recording, but it honestly made me want to like mandate offline time, whether that's the weekend or like after 6.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about it, like that's such with what I do, like I'm like in this weird influencer spot where it's like I have enough followers that people think I'm someone, so like I'm getting a lot of mean comments lately, and then I'm like also small enough that people like will think we're best friends. So
Yeah.
it's like it's so strange. Moving on from that though, so your books, I feel like if I had to give it a category, I would say they're thrillers for the girls, which is like my favorite. Like they're very fun and you tackle these like campy worlds in a really interesting way. Did you, in your first book, you tackle fashion, which I told you I had worked in fashion and I had some PTSD reading that book, which means that you did a great job. Did you intend for your books to kind of like fall into this category and like explore these different worlds, or did it just happen organically?
Okay, 3 things. One, you've got to like turn off your open tags, put on your tag request so that you can monitor mean stuff that people say online. Best advice I've gotten. Like for all I know, this book isn't coming out because I don't see it. 2, whenever I find out that someone worked in media or in fashion and they read my book, the first thing I say is, I am so sorry. Because I know that book needed to come with a giant content warning for anyone, honestly, that's ever been like an assistant, period. But my third thing I have to say is that I'm always so interested when I hear that people read the books as thrillers, because swear to God, I never have intended to write thrillers. I remember right after I went to like my first event to talk about Most Famous Girl, my publisher was telling me that the book was finding its audience in the thriller community. And I was genuinely so surprised because to me, I've always been so much more interested in writing books about the cultural zeitgeist and critique of the cultural zeitgeist. And like, I've always wanted to raise a satirical mirror, but also like an accessible one to society and societal norms. But I sat down and thought about this for a little bit because I was like, this is so interesting. What is this like subconsciously I'm trying to traumatize people? And I think what it is that like incidentally, the content of my books becomes a little scary. But maybe that's because like coming of age as a woman of color and
Yeah.
is just like a little bit of a first generation nightmare. But also like because of the mystery in this book and also the message boards and all that, I wanted to like satirize and really like uh poke fun at like true crime and true crime tropes. But yeah, long story short, with 100 Other Girls and Most Famous Girl, I didn't intend to write straight up thrillers. I think that it was like an incidental part of what it's like to want to write some sort of satire of social structures. And you know, my writing voice and my book content so different from this book, but it makes me think of Yellowface and Yellowface reading as a thriller, even though it's classified as a satire. And I think that there's just something a little scary about pointing out truths about our everyday lives, and then dramatizing them and amplifying them.
That makes so much sense though, because I always like thrillers are one of my favorite genres. And I actually, when I talk about books everyone says are a thriller, sometimes I'm like, is this a thriller? Like, what actually makes a thriller? Like, I think about this all the time, but your explanation makes a lot of sense. When I don't know if when I read 100 Other Girls, I was like, thriller, but this one,
Yeah.
Most Famous Girl in the World, I was like, oh, this feels like a thriller. Because, like, I mean, murder mystery, like, things got scary for a bit.
Intention, like it's hard to talk about this part of the book without giving away stuff that happens, but I always tell people like the last third of this book goes off the deep end. Like it's twist after twist. It's very I mean, it's you just got to suspend disbelief a little bit. And I again, like I intentionally really wanted to play with the tropes of the genre, but I thought genuinely that when I was doing it, I was doing it in a way that was like so campy that like it wasn't going to read as thriller. And I'm thrilled. Like it makes me feel like I've done my job correctly. But I genuinely reading it, I was like, this is funny. But I think that's because like when I was working on Most Famous Girl, I was so close to the text. I'd revised it so many times. I'd read it so many times because this was right after my debut novel had come out. And I was so in my head about my writing because I had just read like thousands of reviews of my own work. So I was really like,
Oh my God, reading the reviews, that's a thriller.
Oh, if you ever want to live a real life thriller, know what thousands of people have to say about your work. And no, and honestly, like I'm really glad I had the experience that I did with my debut novel because it helped me put in like very firm boundaries. But I called up my agent at a certain point while working on Most Famous Girl and said, I cannot tell if this is a book anymore. I've read it too many times that I'm not surprised by anything. I need like a fresh pair of eyes on this before I submit the final version. And bless Taylor's heart, she had people from the agency who hadn't read it yet give me a read, and they were like, "Wait, that ending?" And I was like, "Okay," and truly because I had just
oh my God.
but yeah, it's funny, and it's you said the 100 Other Girls isn't a thriller, but the amount of people that said to me like I was too stressed out reading 100 Other Girls, like it felt like my heart was racing in the same way that a thriller does because it tapped into that. Am I about to get fired anxiety? Is everyone about to get laid off anxiety? Am I about to get screamed at anxiety?
Well, I think I was just attributing the thrilling aspects to my own PTSD.
Straight up, like
because I was like, this was my life for 5 years.
No, like same completely. 100 Other Girls, when I would read it aloud at events, I would start sweating, not just because I was nervous, but because I was reliving what it was like to be that age and like be in that position. So anyway, very long-winded answer.
Yeah,
but
no, I love it.
thanks.
Okay, so a few things. Let's just talk about the ending quickly now, and we're not going to say what happens, but I'm literally just going to say the ending, 5,000 exclamation points, because my jaw dropped, and I actually had to keep rereading it. I was like, did I just read what I think I read? Like, I was like, my brain is like malfunctioning. So good. Did you know it would end the way it ended, or did it kind of just come to you as you were writing?
It's so funny to hear that because the ending of the book was one of the first parts of the book that I
Oh.
created. And the reason that I did it that way is there are a few different bullet points. I really wanted to write a book that would be even better on reread. And
Love
I love
that.
the idea that when you read it, you're gonna have a different perspective. I want people to like try to pinpoint the exact. I can't give too much away, but I want people
Yeah.
to listen and question certain things. And I left it with Easter eggs and foreshadowing. So I'm like a big annotating girly. Like I love like fantasy and mystery. So I wanted to keep people guessing. But then the other part of it is that I wanted to have readers experience what the characters in the books was experiencing, in that I wanted them to end the book finding themselves questioning their own intuition, questioning their sanity, and then perhaps even attempting to justify why characters did certain things despite never really having any insight into their brain, because this is
Mhm.
written first perspective from one character. And I mean, I love getting the voice notes of people screaming. Like, I've gotten enough voice notes of people being like, what just happened? But if that's your reaction, then I think I've done my job, because in the
No,
end,
you have.
it didn't pretend to be a romance. Like, there is a great romance subplot. It didn't pretend to be like women's fic. Like, this book is, I told from the beginning, I was like, guys, this is like, buckle up. So yeah, it's hard to talk about this without,
I know. Well,
but
everybody listening, just know if you're like, if you want like a make you jump up out of your seat ending, then you need to pick this book up because that's what happened to me. Like
no,
I was not okay.
I know I expected it to be divisive, but there was no other way the book was going to end. But to people who aren't huge fans of the ending, I will say that like I in my head know exactly what happened and what will happen. I actually, like, fun fact, the first time I wrote this book, I had mapped it out as part one of a trilogy. As of now, I have like no plans to write the next two
Well, I
books.
was gonna say, are we gonna get the next one?
I don't know. A lot of people would have to like love it and demand it from my publisher, I think. But I sold it as a standalone, and
I'm
in my
gonna start now posting even more
okay.
because I need to know what happened.
Thank you. And I actually think it would be so much fun to return to the characters in the world. And like, there's a lot that isn't super prevalent to the book's ending that is unresolved, like things that don't get explained because it's not necessarily important to the characters' arcs, but like that I would love to go into. Again, like, can't, it's hard to keep it spoiler free, but yeah, let's just say that the ending was intentional, one of the first things I thought of. But if it makes you want to crawl out of your skin, I've got a whole world up here.
Oh, I love it. Okay, you mentioned Easter eggs, and there is an Easter egg to 100 Other Girls in this. Did you always kind of know you wanted to make a little universe, or did that just come up as you were writing?
Yes, I always knew I wanted to make a universe.
I love that.
Mainly because I also like love reading books written by the same author, that are all set in the same universe. Like, it makes me, I already said I'm a annotating Easter egg girly. So like, it makes me like, I actually think in my newsletter this year, I was talking about how Abby Jimenez has 1000% become like the queen of her universe, because um, when I read Just for the Summer, I didn't even pick up on the ways in which multiple characters in that book are characters in her other books, and I did a double take at the end. But yeah, that's not relevant to this. I'm just
Okay,
saying.
but did you know that in Just for the Summer, like the end one, when a new person comes in, I was like, oh, that is so good. But she also puts Easter eggs to her own donut store, which I didn't know this. Have you heard this?
No,
Okay.
brilliant.
So I was like posting about her books because I went on like a little bit of a journey with them in like the spring, and someone messaged me and was like, I love her donut shop. And I was like, they're like, I'm from Minnesota, I love her donut shop. And I was so confused. And then another person messaged me about it and I was like, wait, what? She actually owns a donut shop and she puts it in the books. Like when her characters get donuts, they're from her shop.
I need to reread all of her
Yeah,
books.
now you have to like, you're gonna go through and realize.
So, to-do list. 1, start a small business. 2,
Yeah.
small business into all my books. 3, make millions. Like, that's so funny.
It's literally, I feel like it's like Taylor Swift mastermind. Like, let's just like sell everything.
That's how I feel when I read like an Emily Henry book and I see the most coded reference to a character ever.
Yeah.
Like when I found out that there was a reference to the Beach Read characters, no, People We Meet on Vacation characters in Funny Story that refers to them by the names that they like only use.
Yes, yes.
Well, I literally was like, this woman is brilliant.
I saw that on TikTok after, and I was like, oh my God, because I completely like, it went right over me.
I thought I was a close reader until people pointed this out to me. I was a little more obvious, but I will say that like I really love the idea that like all of my characters are existing in the same New York, but they have like very different relationships to the city. And I also love the idea that like all of these women are like first generation Middle Eastern American women, but like they all have very different connections to their communities and to like relationships to their identity.
Mm-hmm.
And I also love that, well, spoiler, there have only been 2 out, but I like that everyone's a writer, but in a completely different capacity. Like I
didn't even think of that, but yeah.
Well, that's because there's only been 2 books, and in my I'm like I'm masterminding over here doing.
Oh, what a coincidence! They're both writers.
But they're different. So I love this idea that like these women could ride the subway together and never know that they were on the same train. So
yeah, I love that. You mentioned New York, and so I get asked a lot for book recs that like feel very New York. And honestly, I'm not just saying this because I'm talking to you. I feel like 100 Other Girls is at the top of that list because both of your books, the way that you write about the city feels so real. But specifically that one, I'm not going to like dox myself and say where I live, but you've clearly spent a lot of time where I live because I was like, oh, I should go to this cafe that's not that far from me. And I think of you whenever I walk by the Supreme store because you mentioned that it's such like a small antidote in the book, but it is like one of the weirdest places in the world, I think. Yeah. And I walk by all the time on my way to Soho, and every single time I think about you, 100 Other Girls.
The biggest compliment, I think you're not the first person to say that to me. And I think that just something so visceral about like the image of teenage girls sitting on those steps drinking Four Locos. Like it just feels correct.
Yes.
And anyone that like, if you guys haven't walked by this store, it is like an old building that has been renovated into a store where there is a line around the corner at all times to get. Yes. And it used to be truly like a condemned building, like rats, bats, and girls drinking illegal beverages. So I take that as the highest compliment. Thank you.
And it's like when I walk by there, I don't know if you felt this, but I always feel very uncomfortable because it's usually like I feel like they have to be tourists, but it's always just men or sometimes like a mom with a young boy, and I'm in like workout clothes and I'm just like, oh God, like I walk by all these men right now. So now it's like I'm reframing it as you're helping me through that journey down that block.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad. This is why I like writing about New York. It makes me so happy because it's I feel like anyone can describe the New York skyline in like visceral detail, but not everyone experienced like seeing a man pee in an alleyway while drinking the most disgusting caffeinated alcoholic beverage. So it's great to like bring people together through that, and I'm glad I reframed that. Of course, like Rose's relationship to New York is extremely different than Noura's. Like Noura, I think that like 100 Other Girls really romanticized New York, and I had the opportunity to basically world build her New York as if it were like a fantasy novel. Like I think it felt very like her New York felt very fantastical. But you know, Rose is a transplant. Rose is like inherently way more sardonic and cynical. And while her relationship to New York like changes over the novel, like towards the end, you get the sense that like this girl literally could never live anywhere else. Um,
Yeah.
you know, she's harboring so much anger, especially at the beginning of the book. Um, but I love that I get to capture multiple sides of the city and have them exist within the same universe, the same world, the same book. And, you know, I think that like, it's funny also because I guess I will dox myself. Like I wrote about Rose living in quote unquote Clinton Hell. And now for a year after 100 Other Girls came out, I moved to like the area, not Clinton Hill proper, but I'm in like the neighborhood. And for me, it's Clinton heaven. And I know that Rose has like really the most disgusting apartment of all time, which is, you know, her own Craigslist fault. But it's fun for me to sort of I feel like I wrote a wink and a nod to myself. Like I walk
I
around,
love that.
this is so hilarious. This isn't even something I did intentionally. And I did live close to, not exactly where Nora lived, but close to where Nora lived on the Lower East Side. So it's again, like totally unintentional, but like there's something funny about like the predestination of me being able to like walk through these spaces and experiencing them as if I wouldn't have been there had I not read the books. So
Yeah.
anyway, long
I love
rant.
that. But you also like showing both of their relationships with New York.
Yeah,
They're two very realistic views
yeah,
of New York that like
yeah,
even me living there, like I have all the time. It's like one day I'm like, I hate it here. And then the next I'm like, this is the best place in the world. How could I ever move?
yeah. I feel the exact same. Like I was born and raised here, so like I'm a New York ride or die. Like when people critique New York, I get overly defensive because I feel like they're insulting me personally. I have something I truly have had to work on, but I have days where, especially, you know, when it's bad August and I'm walking around in like the sweltering heat where I'm like, there is no way a single person is happy to be in this subway car right now. And then there are other days when, you know, I'm walking downtown and I can see the city like descending into, you know, just the most like beautiful, it feels like a mosaic, like the most beautiful mosaic of people and color. And I think like you truly could never explain to someone properly what it's like to live.
Yeah, I
You
totally
can't.
agree.
And growing up, I had friends who also were obsessed with New York who like I feel so lucky. Like we would come back from college, we'd do like New York outings on the weekends, and like we'd go to museums, and we'd, you know, travel and eat in all 5 boroughs. And every single time they would say like, aren't we so lucky to live here? Like, isn't this the best place in the world? Like we won the lottery. And I think that infectious energy sort of bled into Nora as a character.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What was it like as a native New Yorker to write about a transplant?
Fun, really fun. Because I have tons of friends who are transplants and I hear their gripes all the time and they're always valid. And something that I love about Rose is I'm always like, Rose, valid, but I still think this is the best place in the world. Like, there's a scene where Rose is walking to meet someone, a character that you will meet at his apartment, and she walks by like these drunk NYU kids, and she's literally having like her inner monologue always cracks me up because she truly has never felt so old in her life despite being in her like mid-20s. And um I I think that is such a relatable moment where it's like you remember what it was like to be in their shoes.
Yeah.
It still makes you so angry. And yeah, it was truly like it was a treat, and something that I had a lot of fun doing and poking fun also at like, you know, insufferable New Yorkers who are obsessed with New York. Like I have no doubt that if Rose met Nora at the beginning of both their books, she would be like, who is this bitch? Like, she clearly has never like had a rat run across her feet. Like on this,
Yeah.
yeah.
I love it. Okay, so you kind of touched on this before when we were talking, but there are other mediums throughout the book. So there's message boards like Google search history. I That's like one of my niche favorite things I love in a book. How did you decide to do that? And like what was it like to write a search history?
Okay. I love this question. I have touched on this like a little bit, but once I realized that what I wanted to do was to satirize mystery and thriller, I knew that like I needed to play with format, whether that meant like the exaggeration and the dramatization of the subgenre tropes, to using technology and linguistics to really like drive my point home. Um, I've also always just been like very inspired by the use of different technological formats in books to tell a story. Like my favorite author growing up was Meg Cabot, and I think Meg Cabot does a really good job of doing this for the early aughts. Like she's got the AM messenger boards, the emails. Like if you go back and read the Princess Diaries, like Meg Cabot was always ahead of her time, and so I loved the idea that like as Rose sort of like descends into what she thinks is madness, like we get to sort of be piggyback onto what she's doing when she's lying to everybody else. Like my FMC really goes through like different iterations of herself that she labels Rose 2.0, Rose 3.0, and kind of hides pieces of her activity from her friends and family while she's doing this, but we get insider knowledge into it because we're in her head.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was a very fun way to make you feel like you are going along on this like descent, this journey with her, and also get you to like empathize more with her. But you know, also on top of that, I thought like, what better way to turn than to turn to like actual conspiracy theories, like places that conspiracies are born and built from like just rumor into myth and legend, which are of course like Reddit, Reddit
Yeah.
threads, section, like the like true bowels of the internet. Like if I'm trying to write a book about conspiracy, then like we need to go to where conspiracy is born and bred. And I also just love the idea that the book will feel like a game of Clue. Like you're given hints and pieces of the puzzle, but it's up to you to like read it closely and put it all together. So
Yeah.
answers for that one, but it felt so like right for the content of the book, but also just so fun, like so fun to work on as well.
It was like I in any book I love it. I feel like it's just like an added little fun treat for the reader. So talking about Rose, I feel like we've been kind of like dancing around one of the bigger themes of the book. We're with her on a journey. Two parts to that. One is like her career is such a roller coaster. So for people listening, when the book opens up, she finds out that Poppy is getting out of prison, and it really like we watch her descend into madness.
Yeah.
And her career as a writer goes on this like journey. So I'm curious, what was it like to write about her as a writer, and if it resembles your career at all?
Okay, so my debut novel, 100 Other Girls, was definitely like I always say that 100 Other Girls was the book I needed to write to like just get it off.
Okay.
But The Most Famous Girl was like the book I wanted to write when I thought to myself, like, if I could write about anything right now, like, what would it be? And I think 100 Other Girls is definitely like, it is a pretty, not straightforward necessarily, but it is um, a commentary on the evolution of the media industry and dream jobs that turn into nightmares, what it's like to be an aspiring creative in the digital age, all that jazz. And in order to write that, you know, like I drew from my own personal experiences, I drew from the anecdotes and experiences of like friends, coworkers. There are pieces of like news stories in there, pieces of, you know, all these different people's perspectives that I brought together to create basically like this monster media workplace. Um, and so that definitely felt like I ruminated on that for years before I felt like I could sit down and there was actually a story worth worth telling. And The Most Famous Girl in the World, leans into a different aspect of the same industry, which like you and I have also talked about a little bit offline, which is, like pseudojournalism and reporting in a world where everyone needs to be first to a story and where people sometimes need to make sacrifices and sacrifice their integrity in some ways in order to be the first person to get people to click in. And that is definitely like an underlying theme when it comes to the Shred, which is the media company that Rose, who really like takes journalism and investigative journalism reporting seriously, that she has trouble like acquiescing to, and it ends up coming to a head in this book, but don't want to give it away. Of course, like parts of that are exaggerated here for the sake of satire and for the sake of telling the story, but they're also very real pieces of both my experience and the experiences of my coworkers that I put in here because, again, like it's almost like Easter eggs for people who have worked in environments like this. And I think that there's also like a really wonderful found family aspect here. Rose has two best friends who are like work friends turned real blood oath best friends. And they're very clearly like trauma bonded for life. And they remind me a lot of like my own friendships that I've made through media. I got married like a week ago. I got married like a couple weeks ago. And two of my bridesmaids were like
Mhm.
I met at 22 working in teen media. And they're still like my group chat today. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that like there's a little bit of a love letter to the group chat in here as well, which was important to me because I don't know. But yeah, Rose and I are very different. Like I think that Nora was really hard character for me to write and read because I wanted to course correct for her so badly. She pissed me off constantly and like she annoyed the shit out of me because I think parts of it, like I saw parts of my younger self in her and I wanted to like turn off the lights, not look.
Yeah.
But Rose and I are very different. I think like beyond some of the more obvious characteristics of Rose, like her cynicism and her just like deep-seated anger, she's way more dedicated to capturing the truth in any
Mm.
capacity. And I have always been more of an essayist. I have a flair for fiction. I love to tell a good story. I'll take creative license, but that's not Rose. And Rose would get so mad about that.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many great characters in this book, and I don't want to jump ahead, but her coworkers, I had the same exact thing. Like two of my best friends in my life it was the three of us at my fashion job. I was just on one of her bachelorette trips. So it was like so real. And when you say trauma bonded, that's what we always say. Like nothing can, and also one of them and I lived together and had a wild roommate experience with another girl. So we're like multiple trauma bonded. And that type of relationship just it really shone through so much. So great job the way that you portrayed that.
I'm so glad. Like I think that like Nora's relationship to her coworkers, although like I'm a Saffron stan, but like Nora's relationship to her coworkers was so complicated because like everyone sort of treated each other kind of horribly because of the system that
Mm-hmm.
was oppressing them within media. Different conversation. This is just like a downright best friends that give it to you straight.
Yeah.
They love you unconditionally. They'll be honest with you when you need it. Like I really loved writing those characters. So I'm grateful that they resonated with you. And yeah, I mean, I dedicated this book to my group chat, to my two best friends from media. And in what time is it? 3.5 hours, I'm meeting one of them to celebrate her new job. So it's like
Oh.
full circle right now. Like the girls are killing it despite the terrible workplaces they're
Yeah.
which is great.
Circling back to Rose. So this book does tackle some heavy themes like substance abuse and I would say addiction. Why did you decide to include it? And what was it like to write something like that, especially in the context of everything else happening in this book?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this book pokes a lot of fun at a lot of things, and it definitely satirizes a lot of things, but I did not want Rose's substance use to be one of them at all. I wanted to treat Rose's experience with substance use disorder and the seriousness that really comes to a head like 3/4 of the way through the book, um, with true commitment to what it would be like to be dealing with the substance use that she struggles with, and then also with her, she has some serious like mental health struggles throughout the book as well. And so in order to do that, I worked like with a sensitivity reader. I worked with different mental health experts, just to make sure that the book didn't like soften or skirt around some of the ugliness of what she deals with, but also felt like compassionate and honest and didn't like condescend toward her. And yeah, I think that like many characters in the world dismiss her struggles as hysteria, including Rose herself. Um, and that's such a common theme in American literature whenever you have complex female characters for centuries. Um, but I wanted to also give her a healing arc too, and show her that like that, you know, she confronts some of her demons and she starts the recovery process, and she does that like with the help of her friends. So it was definitely something that I took very seriously. It was a challenge to write just because I wanted to make sure that I did right by people that struggle with substance use disorder. But I'm very lucky that I know a wonderful ex mental health editor who gave me a lot of wonderful pointers. And then the team at Source Books introduced me to an amazing sensitivity editor and copy editors. So, yeah, there's a lot of funny business in this book, but her relationships to substances and her mental health are hopefully not going to be two of them.
I think you handled it so well. I've never struggled with addiction, but I don't drink. I stopped drinking 3 years ago, and so I feel like I always am just like nitpicky about how things like that are portrayed. And like reading this, I was like, oh, it like I don't know, it made sense and it felt very real. And then also like you mentioned, like it is an arc that she's on, and I liked getting to see her kind of come out on the other end of it.
Yeah, I didn't want it to feel like a cliche.
Yeah.
And I am really, I think that like Fern and Rose, who are her two best friends, um, point out to her certain or enlighten her to certain things that like help her essentially ask for help and start receiving it. So it's not
Mhm.
like the second that she recognizes she has a problem, she's all better.
Right.
And the book is like very clear that like she's in the process of healing. Like she's started therapy, she goes through treatment, and she's taking steps in order to better herself. But recovery is a journey, and substance use is an illness, and it's not like you just get over it. It's something that she's going to have to um, not deal with, but it's something that is going to be a part of her for the rest of her life. So
Right.
um, I'm glad that you felt that I dealt with that with grace. And it's a part of Rose, but it's not all of Rose. So
Right.
I'm,
I love that. Okay, completely switching gears to a bit later. Our two main girls, Rose and Poppy, are named after flowers.
yes.
How did that come to be?
That's like another thing that I knew right when I sat down to write the book. Like I knew from the get go that their names were going to be Rose and Poppy because there's a line at the end of the book that references their names. And that line was one of like the first sentences that like came to me before I was
So
writing. So
interesting.
and also I think that like both their names, this will become more clear when you read the line, but both their names are so perfectly capture their characters. So I had to keep it in, although my mom, shout out Maman, opened the book and was like, why is the Persian girl's name Rose? Like, not a Farsi name. And I was like, Maman, I know there's There's a reason. Like it'll get like just let me
That
live.
makes sense.
Yeah, classic Persian parents. But yeah, it was one of those things where it's like I knew immediately that this was Rose and Poppy, and when I took a second to be like, but why? The sentence just
Oh.
so.
I have to go back now and look at that sentence.
Yeah.
Did you have a favorite character to write? Because there's I would say there's like a fun cast here.
Okay, thank you. I totally agree. There's like fun cast of characters, diverse cast of characters, like very quirky characters in here. My favorite characters by far, and I've already talked about this, are Steph and Fern, just because like I feel like everyone needs a Steph and Fern in their lives.
Mhm.
In my first book, my favorite character was Layla, and I think it's just like I'm a sucker for found family, best friendship. Like I I love the idea of friends who like will love you unconditionally but also give it to you straight, and they're just so funny. Like their texts to each other always made me laugh, and I just thought that they had great banter. It was just so fun to write. And then my other favorite character is Roommate.
Yes.
And this reminds me, someone commented on a TikTok of mine yesterday and was like, I'm reading Most Famous Girl right now, really enjoying it, but is the character's name actually just Roommate? And a great example of me not biting. I was like, I can't respond. I can't respond. I just have to just.
That felt so real because like I have two roommates and most people in my life know them and have met them multiple times, but I always in a story will be like my roommate. Like I never say their name. I refer to them as my roommates. So maybe it's like a New York having a roommate thing.
And also just like Rose is the center of her own universe at the
Yes.
book. There's zero way she would have learned roommates. I promise you that she asked roommate's name the first time they moved in together, and then like never, it was like hard to pronounce, and she never
Yeah.
couldn't ask again because it was like awkward. And so she just calls her roommate. And yeah, I mean, there's that character was like so much fun, so funny. Like I again don't want to give anything away, but like
Yeah.
I really enjoyed Roommate and Boyfriend, and Fern and stuff. They were both like wonderful side characters. And then also Poppy. You don't really get to like spend a lot of time with Poppy until the end of the book, which is a total tragedy. Like I need a book of just Poppy and Rose interacting. Source books.
Or just
But
like Poppy's POV throughout
yeah,
everything.
I would love to be in. Yes, completely. I would love to spend some time in Poppy's head. But yeah, I really had a lot of fun with her as a character. I did a lot of reading into antisocial personality disorder and narcissism, and yeah, her what is it like? My sociopathy is chronic, but my tits are iconic, which I wanted to make shirts for, but it's looking a little libelous. But I get a lot of fun just breaking her to life.
Yeah. What do you hope readers take away from this book?
Oh my gosh. I hope that readers will be inspired to do three things. One is interrogate their relationship to celebrities and public figures. Two is schedule an appointment with their therapist. And three is call their moms. Um, but in all seriousness, like I do really hope that this novel leads to like a larger meditation on conspiracy bandwagon jumping, parasocial relationships, especially as we head into an election year. We're currently in an election year. And there's a lot of narratives being written and applied to people. You know, don't forget, like we're never going to know anyone in totality. And then additionally, I really hope that this leads people to think more about like Middle Eastern identity. I love how different Rose and Nora are from each other. I love that both of their relationships to their like Iranian American identity are so different. And yeah, Middle Eastern American women don't exist in a monolith, and hopefully this book underlines that. But past all the serious stuff, I hope that you read it in one day. I hope you laugh. I hope that you have weird dreams about it. And I hope that you send me voice notes screaming when you finish the end.
Literally just like I read it for the ending. If we haven't convinced you by now, like you have to just read the whole book to get to the last page. So every week on my podcast, I start the show off talking about something I'm currently obsessed with. It could be a show, a book. It doesn't have to be book related. Like right now, my mom and I the other day started Only Murders in the Building. We're on season 3, so we're behind, but like I am obsessed with that show right now. Is there anything that you're obsessed with?
Well, I'm just like every other bitch. So I've been listening to Sabrina Carpenter's new album nonstop. I, missed everything when I was on my honeymoon because I was like not looking at the internet. And when I first listened to it, I was on my way back to New York, and I downloaded that shit so fast because I was like, this is going to be my soundtrack for um, the entire plane ride. And I just love how like horny and funny.
I know.
It gets very playful. It doesn't take itself too seriously. Like that, it has some like earnest country moments.
I know. I was shocked by that.
It was really, really good. And I will say, like, I wasn't a huge Sabrina Carpenter fan before. Like, in that I enjoy some of her songs, but I would never like go to a concert. And this album is the first one that I've like sat down, listened to the whole thing, and thought like this is going to be on repeat. So obsessed with that. Yeah, I'm not really watching anything right now. Oh wait, no, I'm watching Emily in Paris, but I can't. I don't know, like guys, I don't know if I'm obsessed with this season. Like
Okay, so I did a rewatch right before because like I'm unemployed right now, so I had nothing else to do. And I actually liked it better the second time around, but aren't you so mad they're splitting it in two?
Why is Netflix doing this?
I don't understand because I was so into it. I binged it all. Like I was actually like babysitting my young cousin, so I was sleeping at my aunt and uncle's, and I just like watched it one night, and I'm like, I can't believe I have to stop.
Part 1 and part 2 ruined Bridgerton, I think.
Okay, I feel the same exact way, and I was actually got angry about that all over again this afternoon.
They lost so much momentum.
Yeah, that's why I don't understand it. Like, do it weekly or all at once. Because I like Bridgerton, I forgot there was more coming.
I love a weekly release. Like I know that people love to like marathon shows, but weekly release reminds me of like CW 8 p.m.
Yes.
For the Vampire Diaries.
Yes.
Like, was peak, like that was peak entertainment for me. So I love a weekly. I was a huge Bridgerton fan, but like did not like the way that they rolled out the 3rd season, and Emily in Paris too. It's like you I don't think you guys have enough fans to be doing this. Like again, I don't want to come for Emily in Paris, like
yeah,
be a hater of it. And I also enjoy, like I think it's fun to watch. And also like all the French people on the show are so chic. Like to me, the hero of that show is Sylvie.
Oh, yes.
I actually enjoy that. I feel like they figured out that Emily is like the villain to a lot of people. So they're making her more insufferable and like aware of how insufferable she is. So that's kind of fun. But I don't know. I read a Vulture review of week, and the writer was like, you will enjoy this show if you just assume every character has amnesia and like never remembers anything that they said or did in the last like 5 to 10 minutes. And that actually was a perfect reframe for me.
Yeah.
It made it way more like plausible.
I think I just love it because it is dumb and ridiculous, and like it's like brain candy. Like sometimes you just need to like turn reality off. And like I wish I was as me and one of my old work friends actually always say like we wish we were delusional. Like we're too smart. Like it would be so much easier if we like if we weren't so realistic and geniuses.
No, completely. Like it's entertainment lobotomy in the best way. And
yes.
like I also there are certain things about Emily in Paris I really enjoy. I'm coming around on it as I talk to you. One, I feel like Emily in Paris does for Paris kind of what like 100 Other Girls was doing for New York, which is like it creates like this fantastical, like vibrant, romantic city. Like so I love that. As a lover of Paris, like I watched for the Paris porn, like low key. Also, the outfits are so ridiculous. They're like fun to look at. Like I know it's a Darren Star production and he was behind Sex and the City, but like that it's fun to think to yourself, I wonder what like new form of plastic Mindy's gonna wear next. Like I
Yes.
enjoy that part a lot.
Well, do you want to know something crazy? There's been two pieces on that show that I owned before the show. And I'm like, it's really just like a study in them taking clothes and making them ridiculous, like the way
Yeah,
they put them all together.
it's totally like they figured it out and now they're leaning into it and
Yeah.
it's fun. And also I think like just accepting that it's like supposed to be campy and fun is helpful too. Like
Yeah.
like I don't know what they're doing with like Mindy's storylines. Like I don't care that she's going to Eurovision. Like I don't remember the name of her bandmates. Like I don't know
I
why.
know. I'm interested in the kind of like LVMH, whatever
Oh,
it's supposed to be in that world, like that takedown.
loved it. And I loved that Sylvie was the person,
Yes.
the final nail in the coffin, because she's such a
Yeah.
complex female figure. I fucking chortled when Sylvie walked into work and Emily goes, "There's my Shiro." I was like, "That's hilarious!" Like that also reminded me of 100 Other Girls, like where I was like, "That's such hilarious, like millennial
I
babble."
feel like, yeah, like I feel like they know what they're doing.
Yeah,
I don't
and
know. Yeah.
it's got to be they're leaning into satire, which is the
Yeah. Yeah.
wow, I'm like really coming around on it. I think the reason that like I was negative about it when I started is because I don't know if I can do like Gabrielle's and Camille's and the love triangle thing. Like I don't know if I can do this any longer. Like I
No,
needed a lot.
I'm over that. And also, so like at the end of the last season when she said she was pregnant, I was like, I bet you she's not pregnant. And then when I rewatched, I remembered my idea was wrong, but her mom says to her, like, oh, I'll help you get him back. And then all of a sudden she's pregnant. So I'm like, did her mom tell her to like fake a pregnancy?
Totally. Like totally. Also just like I justice for Camille because Camille was cool in season one. And they've just like picked apart her
Ruined her.
and made
Yeah,
her uncool. Like, why are you playing games for loser Gabrielle? Like I know like it's just
I
they
know.
made her style less cool. Like she
I
was
know.
and they made her dress like Emily. Like it drives
You
me.
know.
So
So
that's the
interesting.
reason I was like, I can't deal with this nonsense. Like Gabrielle's hot, like definitely, but like I not hot enough for all of this babble. Like I can't.
No.
Also, like I don't know why we're making so many like allusions to sex. I feel like the show got way more fade to black too in this season. I was like if you're gonna make
Yeah,
Gabrielle
like the
look
roof.
punk, yeah, like at least show them like making out for a little bit. Like I don't
Yeah,
know.
I didn't think of that.
I don't know. Anyway, that's my last
Yeah.
like said. Will I be watching part two? Absolutely. What else am I gonna do while I exercise, cook, and shower? Like I need
Right.
activity.
Well, and it's Emily in Rome, so we'll have a new guy.
I know. Well, yeah. You mean Gabrielle in a mustache?
I I know.
It's gonna be like reveal. It's Gabrielle's identical twin. Like,
Oh my God. I could talk. I should have a podcast about Emily in Paris, honestly. What is next for you? Is there anything you can tell us? Because at the end of this book, there is a little tease.
okay, did you read that?
I actually didn't. I don't like to do that because I get too excited. And then
Okay.
I'm like, oh, I have to stop.
I'm very, very. I actually turned in the first edit of my third book, like right before I left for my
Oh,
wedding.
congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks. It was a crazy month. I'm sure it's actually trash though because like I was editing while
Getting
like
married.
I'm scared. So I'm sure it's not done, but I am so excited about my third book. All of the anxiety and second guessing I had with The Most Famous Girl, I didn't experience with the third. It was just
Oh,
so
good.
joyful. I think that it continues a lot of the work that I've been doing in 100 Other Girls and Most Famous Girl in that like it has its own like social critique part of it. It's very funny and it plays with format but in a completely different way. And I'm really excited. And especially if you're a romance reader, I think you're really going to love this one.
Okay, I'm gonna go back tonight and I'll read that.
I think you're really going to like this if you are, this is like my little love letter to the romance community, even though it's not a romance novel. It's a love letter to, and if you read fantasy romance, I had a lot of fun on part of this book.
Oh my God. Okay, I'm intrigued.
But let's just say I did a lot of research into mermaid and siren lore. So
Okay, I swear to God, like I knew we would get along. I like the last week I've been obsessed with mermaids.
yes.
And
Oh,
I'm like, my theme for September is mermaids. Like yesterday I was swimming in the ocean. I was like, I'm like in like a mermaid era right now.
you're a child of the tides, a fellow child.
Yes. Oh my God, crazy.
I to this day, I don't understand why mermaids have completely disappeared from the culture. Like, where are the mermaid shows? Where are the mermaid books? Where are the mermaid movies?
In
Like,
the ocean yesterday, I was like, oh, I want to pick up a mermaid book. I'm like, I don't even know what to pick up.
there like are no popular
Oh my
mermaid.
God. Okay, I'm so excited now.
But yeah, again, like it's still a me book. Like I want to
Yeah.
we're not totally pivoting genres, but it was so much fun to write. I can't wait to like meet back up here and talk about that next because it was
Yes, definitely. Okay, where can everybody find you on social media?
You can find me at Iman Hariri-Kia on Instagram and TikTok. And you can also subscribe to my newsletter, Cherry Picked. It's a coming of age newsletter. I send out weekly current state of the unions and a monthly coming of age essay. And then for paying subscribers, a Sunday weekly report where I talk about like trend forecasting, etc.
Fun.
It's very fun to write. In addition, like if you have read my work and just can't get enough, my website has like a selection of article clippings and essays and stories that I've worked on in the past. Please don't be a stranger. DM me, say hi. We can be friends. I am around, and yeah, I love you guys. I'm one of the girls. Like I'm just chilling. Like I'm here to talk about Emily in Paris. If you
Oh, thank you so much for joining me today. I feel like we could just go on for hours. Most Famous Girl in the World comes out tomorrow, September 17th. So make sure everybody you add it to your cart immediately. You do not want to miss this. I loved it so much. And I've loved chatting with you. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Kayla. Thanks, guys. Bye.